Have you ever imagined being surrounded by police on your own land just because one woman in the neighborhood thought she had the right to rule over an entire hillside? I didn't have to imagine it. I lived it. And her name? Trisha Langford. But around here, folks only call her one thing: HOA Karen. This is the story of how one woman used fake regulations to try and take the land my ancestors left me, and how I, armed with a thick folder and one loyal dog, made sure she reaped exactly what she sowed. My name is Henry Blake, 56 years old, retired firefighter. I live alone on the ranch my grandfather left me, tucked deep in the Timber Ridge Mountains of Colorado. And that morning, just as I took my first sip of coffee, my world exploded. "Sir, step out of the house with your hands where we can see them." The voice ripped through the morning fog via loudspeaker. I was still in my sleepwear, hair dripping from a shower, gripping my best grandpa ever mug, when I saw 3 patrol cars blocking the gate to my ranch, red and blue lights flashing, guns holstered but ready, cold scanning eyes. Duke, my Belgian Malinois I raised from a pup, was barking like mad on the porch. One officer placed a hand on his holster. Another spoke into a radio, eyes locked on my front door like I had hostages inside. I froze, heart pounding. "Are you Henry Blake?" one of them asked, voice hard as steel. "Yes." "That's me. What's going on?" "We received a complaint from the Raintree Hills Residential Board. They're reporting you're trespassing and unlawfully occupying land that isn't yours. Do you have proof of ownership?" I nearly dropped my coffee. Trespassing? On the very land my grandfather built with his bare hands? This ranch has been in my family for nearly 70 years, long before Raintree Hills HOA ever existed. Long before I was even born. I moved back here last year after a second spinal surgery to retire early and live in peace. "You've got to be kidding." No one laughed. One officer stepped forward with cuffs in hand. "Until we can verify ownership, you'll need to vacate the premises and await investigation." That's when I saw a flash of red down the dirt road. Her, high heels, crimson blouse, oversized sunglasses, strutting like a senator on Capitol Hill. Her real name is Trisha Langford, but in this town, everyone just calls her Karen, capital. K, president of the Raintree Hills HOA. That shiny new neighborhood recently built on the southern edge of my ranch. I clenched my jaw as she stood there, arms crossed, chin tilted upward, wearing a smug little smile. "I told you, officers," Karen said, enunciating each word like she was on stage. "This man does not belong to our community. We sent notices last month, which he ignored. He's, keeping livestock, running an unregistered generator, and building structures without approval. We are requesting eviction." "Eviction? On my land?" I didn't argue, didn't shout. I simply reached into my wallet, pulled out a worn old document sealed in protective plastic, and unfolded it in front of them. A certified land deed, complete with county seal and a judge's signature. The original. Signed over from my grandfather, to my father, and from my father, to me. The officers fell silent. Their faces tightened like stretched wires. One slowly backed away toward his cruiser, speaking into the radio. Karen, too, took a half step back. The smile faded. Her eyes flickered from smug to stunned, and that's when I knew this wasn't over, not even close. They left after 30 minutes. The officers, I mean. Once they verified the deed, made a few calls to the county registrar, and saw the signature from the land board themselves, they unclenched. One of them actually apologized. The other just tipped his hat and muttered, "Hope that's the last time we get called out here for something this stupid." I nodded, but I knew better. With people like Trisha Langford, Karen incarnate, it's never the last time. It's just the first. "Move." She didn't say a word as she turned to leave. Just clicked her heels down my gravel drive like a general in retreat, still trying to hold on to dignity she never earned. But 2 days later, the second shot was fired. I was fixing a section of the old goat pen when I heard the brass bell at my gate ring. Duke barked twice. I dried my hands on my jeans and walked up to find a man in a gray suit standing awkwardly in the dust. Clip-on tie, 2 shiny shoes. He didn't look like he belonged in the countryside. "You Mr. Blake?" he asked, Depends on who's asking. I'm here on behalf of the Raintree Hills Homeowners Association. This is your welcome packet. He handed me a thick, glossy envelope. On the cover was a smiling couple holding hands in front of a house that looked like a showroom. Across the top, it read, "Welcome to the Raintree Hills family. Your future begins here." Inside was a printed letter, a dues schedule, a 34-page rulebook, and, get this, a $200 initiation fee request. It was dated and stamped, like it was some kind of legal summons. "You can take that back to whoever sent you," I said flatly. "I'm just the messenger." "Well, message received. The answer's no." The guy shrugged and walked back to his sedan. Didn't argue. Probably gets that a lot from folks who actually read fine print. That night, I sat on the porch with Duke and reread my deed 3 times just to be sure. My land wasn't inside their HOA boundaries. It never was. Raintree Hills was developed less than 5 years ago. My grandfather's name was carved into one of the fence posts on the ridge. He built this place in 1952. It was mine, and no glossy pamphlet was going to change that. But Trisha wasn't trying to negotiate. She was declaring war. The next morning, I found red spray-painted arrows on 3 of my oldest pine trees near the southern edge. "Remove," they said. Not even a question, just an order. That same week, my mailbox got smashed, completely bent in half like someone took a bat to it. I replaced it. The next day, it was filled with wet, shredded HOA flyers. Then the Wi-Fi went out. I spent half a day digging until I found the cable. Sliced clean. Not chewed, not damaged by weather. Cut. Deliberate. Still, I stayed quiet. I didn't post about it. Didn't call the sheriff. I wanted to believe maybe it was random. Maybe it wasn't her. Until Duke limped home one afternoon with a welt on his side like someone had chucked a rock straight at him. That was it. Walked straight into the county records office that same afternoon and requested the latest jurisdiction maps, survey data, and zoning definitions. Took them home, laminated every page, and stapled them together into a thick binder. If Trisha Langford wanted to play dirty, I'd play legal, and I'd be better at it than she was. The very next week, a man showed up again, this one in khakis and a clipboard. "You're in violation of visual compliance codes under Section 7.2, he said. "Come again?" "Unkempt tools visible from the road. Livestock not screened from public view. Unapproved solar panels. You're being fined $3,000. He handed me a salmon-colored envelope and walked off like he didn't just try to drop a bomb in my mailbox. I opened it. No county seal. No legal language, just a signature from Trisha Langford, President, Raintree Hills, HOA. I laughed. I couldn't help it. I dialed the county office. "Is there any legal HOA jurisdiction over my ranch?" I asked. The clerk didn't even hesitate. "No, sir. You're outside all HOA boundaries. No such authority exists over your land." "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. That night, I sat on the porch again, Duke at my side. The wind rustled the trees. The stars were clear overhead, and I realized something important. This wasn't about a fence, or a generator, or livestock. It was about control. Trisha didn't care that my land was older than her HOA. She didn't care that it was legal or private or documented. What she cared about was that someone outside her gated kingdom had dared to live free, without permission, without tribute, and that kind of freedom, it scares people like her. So no, the war wasn't over. It had just begun. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My south field looked like a war zone. Crops torn up, chicken coop half submerged, fence posts leaning like drunken soldiers. The soil, once rich and dark, now a sloppy, ruined mess. And in my hand, that damn red crystal bead. I held it under the porch light like it was evidence from a crime scene, because that's exactly what it was. This wasn't vandalism. This was domestic sabotage. And this time, I wasn't just going to patch the damage and move on. No, not this time. I was going to document, report, and bury her with the truth. The next morning, I made 2 phone calls. First, I called the sheriff's department, filed an official report for suspected criminal tampering and property destruction. Second, I rang up Todd Brewer, an old buddy from my firefighter days, now working as an environmental investigator. Tall guy, bald as a cue ball, straight shooter. We'd done volunteer work together for a veteran farming program. When I told him what happened, he didn't hesitate. "Be there in an hour," he said. He showed up in his beat-up green Jeep, boots already muddy before he stepped out. One look at the field and he just whistled low. Yeah, this wasn't some leaky pipe. We hiked up the ridge where the main water line ran, an old setup from my grandfather's day, reinforced years ago. It was simple, reliable, and never failed. Until now. About 300 yards up, hidden behind a row of pines, we found the access box. The metal cover had been pried open and tossed aside. The pressure valve had been yanked wide and jammed into place, and there, half buried in the disturbed soil, was the rest of the bracelet. Todd crouched down, pulled out his GPS and camera. "Want this documented?" he asked. I nodded. "All of it. We took soil samples, photographed the valve, recorded coordinates, even collected the bead and clasp as physical evidence." "This isn't just trespassing," Todd said, standing. "It's agricultural interference. You're in Colorado. This could qualify as an environmental violation." "Good," I said. "Let's make sure the state sees it that way." Todd filed the complaint that afternoon. I added it to the growing file I kept on my kitchen table, a binder now 2 inches thick, but I didn't stop there. Over the next week, I rebuilt, not just the field, but the defenses. I raised the new chicken coop 3 feet off the ground, added drainage trenches, and poured concrete footers. I had a contractor friend install motion-triggered trail cams on every angle of my property, camouflaged, night vision capable, and time-stamped. Let her come back. Just once, and like clockwork, she did. This time, she didn't show up in person. Instead, she sent the county. 2 inspectors rolled up my drive, clipboards in hand. "Health and safety check," one said. "Anonymous complaint." I nodded. "Of course. Come on in." I walked them through everything. My composting system, my water filtration, my animal housing. I answered every question with a smile. One of the officers, a silver-haired woman named Officer Lynn, raised an eyebrow. "You run this all by yourself?" "Every nail and panel," I said. She looked impressed. 3 days later, I received a formal letter from the county. No violations. No concerns. Case closed. That was strike 2 for Tricia. But I had a feeling she still had one more desperate card to play. I just didn't expect fire. It happened on a windy afternoon. I was feeding the goats when I smelled smoke. Sharp, acrid, and far too close. I ran to the ridge and saw it. Flames licking up from the edge of Raintree Hills, black smoke rising from behind one of the luxury homes. A backyard shed had caught fire, and the wind was pushing it hard, right toward my fence. Line, I didn't think so. I didn't pause. I ran. Turned on my emergency water pump, unrolled the fire hose I'd rigged behind the barn, and charged into the smoke. I fought the flames for over 20 minutes, drenched in sweat, lungs burning, face smeared in ash, until the fire trucks finally arrived. And who came running down the hill? Tricia. She stopped cold when she saw me, hose in hand, face blackened, standing between her HOA homes and the fire. You set this fire," she screamed. "You're trying to get revenge." The fire chief, stepping down from his rig, raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, this man just saved your house. The fire started from a grill tip-over on your neighbor's deck." Tricia's face turned scarlet. Not from heat, from shame. And still, that wasn't the real karma. No, that came the next morning, in a black SUV with government plates. Todd stepped out holding a folder. He grinned and handed it to me. "You're going to want to see this." I flipped it open. It was the full environmental investigation report, and it didn't just confirm she'd sabotaged my water line. It revealed something far bigger. The Raintree Hills HOA had illegally diverted runoff into a protected creek bed on my land, no permits, no approval, no oversight, just Trisha Langford playing God with other people's land. I smiled. Can I use this in court? Todd nodded. You can, and you should. I looked down at Duke, wagging his tail beside me. Game on. Have you ever walked into a room and felt every pair of eyes turn on you like you just walked in with a flamethrower? That's what it felt like when I stepped into the Raintree Hills Community Center that evening, except I didn't come to start a fire. I came to burn down a lie. I had a thick folder in my hands. Inside, photos, GPS logs, environmental violations, water contamination charts, the whole 9 yards. And at the top, Todd's official investigation report, stamped and signed by the Colorado State Environmental Division. Trisha Langford was already at the podium, rambling to a packed room about neighborhood values and dangerous outsiders. The usual fear-mongering garbage. She had a slideshow behind her, full of blurry photos of livestock, muddy trails, and what she called visual blight. And then I walked in. Silence fell like a curtain. A few gasps. Someone muttered, "That's him." I didn't say a word, just kept walking. Jake was waiting in the front row. He stood and gave me a nod, the kind that says, "It's your stage now." I stepped right up to the mic. "Evening, folks. My name's Henry Blake. Some of you know me as the guy living beyond the ridge. Some of you probably know me from the HOA newsletter as a problem." A nervous chuckle rippled through the room. I didn't come here to argue. I came, here with facts. I held up the report. The screen behind me switched from Trisha's slideshow to a scanned copy of the violation summary, big and bold. In red letters, environmental breach, unauthorized runoff diversion. Gasps, real ones this time. I turned to the crowd. What you're looking at is an official report from the state. This document confirms that Raintree Hills HOA, under the leadership of Trisha Langford, not only trespassed onto my land, but diverted runoff water illegally into a protected creek bed, contaminating soil and threatening downstream wildlife. People murmured. Trisha stiffened at the podium. "That's not all," I continued. "They also sabotaged my private irrigation system, leading to a flood that destroyed crops, injured livestock, and nearly wiped out my entire south field. And yes, I've got photos, timestamps, and even a red bracelet bead found at the scene." The screen shifted. Up came the photos. Todd holding the soil sample, the broken valve, the red bead. Trisha looked like someone just unplugged her soul. "Now, I didn't come here for revenge," I said. "I came here to warn you because while she's been trying to force me into her HOA, into her rules, into her control, she's also been doing something else." I clicked the remote. A financial spreadsheet popped up. Ever wonder where your HOA dues are really going? Line by line, I walked them through it. Bulldozer rentals, 21,000 trail consulting, 15,000 beautification project planning, 18,500 Trisha Langford, community expansion consultant fee, 12,000 AI woman in the Yasai. Third row gasped audibly. "She paid for herself?" Another voice shouted, "Is that even legal?" Trisha tried to speak, but Jake stepped forward and said, "Let the man finish." I clicked to the next slide. Karen's cousin's law firm paid with HOA funds for boundary research. Then I closed the folder and looked straight at them. You've all been paying into a system built on lies, fake authority, and self-dealing. This isn't just about me. It's about every one of you who ever got fined for a mailbox that was too short, a trash can left out an hour too long, or a lawn that wasn't HOA green. The room was dead silent. Then an older man stood up in the back. "This is a disgrace. She should step down immediately." Another voice followed. "Let's call a vote." Then a third. "I want a full audit. Now." Trisha finally cracked. "You people are blind. He's manipulating you. He lives like a squatter. He's going to drag down the value of our entire community." Jake stood beside me. "The only thing dragging this community down," he said calmly, Is the woman screaming at her neighbors while hiding her crimes in the budget? The place erupted in applause. I didn't gloat. I just turned and walked, out, folder still in hand, but I wasn't 2 steps out the door before Jake grabbed my arm. "You better come quick," he said. "You're not going to believe this." He drove like the devil was behind us, straight to the west field. As we crested the ridge, I saw it. 3 bulldozers, already working. They were carving a straight path into my land. Workers in vests. Trees. Marked with spray paint. Stakes, my boundary stakes, ripped from the dirt. "They're calling it a walking trail expansion," Jake said, breathless. "They're already calling it common land." I stood there for a long second, and then I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, record. Then I called 911. 911, what's your emergency? "Yes, I need to report active trespassing and property destruction in progress. Multiple individuals with heavy machinery on my private land. I have legal boundary documents on file. Is anyone in danger?" Looked out across the field, fists clenched. Not yet, but they're about to be. Click. By the time I reached the west edge of my ranch, I could already hear the low roar of diesel engines. Bulldozers, 3 of them, chewing through my tree line like it was theirs to take. Workers were stomping around with clipboards, one of them dragging my orange survey stakes into a pile like discarded litter. I raised my phone, still recording. Then I turned to Jake. "Let's make sure they don't get away with this." He nodded and pointed down the dirt path. "They're not going to like what's coming up that road." A minute later, I heard it. Sirens. 2 county sheriff cruisers barreled up the trail, tires kicking up clouds of dust. The bulldozers screeched to a halt. The first deputy out of the car was a tall, broad-shouldered man I'd seen before, Deputy Ramos. He didn't waste time. Everyone shut it down. "Back away from the equipment." The workers looked confused. One tried to argue. "We're just doing trail work for the HOA. Ramos cut him off. "This land is not part of the HOA district. Mr. Blake, show me the documents." I handed him the laminated property boundary map, notarized deed, and the cease and desist order I'd filed after the last attempt. He read through them quickly, then turned to the crew. "You're trespassing on private land. This work is illegal." A second deputy walked over and began filming the scene for evidence. I stepped forward. "You see this?" I pointed to the stakes pulled out of the ground. "That's evidence. Tampering. I want every single name, license, and company affiliation recorded." And just like that, the entire site was shut down. The workers packed up their gear in silence, one of them nervously trying to shield his name tag. Too late. The deputies already had it all. And then, right on cue, a white news van rolled up. Camera. "Crew," Jake grinned. "My niece, Channel 7. Figured you'd want the world to see this." She stepped out, ponytail bouncing, microphone in hand. "Mr. Blake, mind if we ask you a few questions on camera?" I nodded. They rolled the camera. Duke sat beside me, tail still, ears alert. "This land has been in my family for over 70 years, I said, eyes on the lens. "We built this ranch with our hands, our sweat, and our history. What's happening here isn't just overreach, it's theft, and I'm not going to let them get away with it." The clip aired that evening across 3 counties. Headline: "Veteran rancher defends land against HOA bulldozers." My phone blew up. Neighbors, old friends, total strangers. Messages poured in, people thanking me, supporting me, some even offering legal help pro bono. But then came the real twist, an anonymous email. No name, no subject, just a single line. "Check the HOA financial report. Something's buried there." Stared at the message. It didn't come from a troll. It was too precise, too timed. I called Jake. "Still got access to the HOA member portal?" He laughed. "They think I'm just the quiet vet who plays chess at the clubhouse." 10 minutes. Later, we were in his study, logged into the HOA internal files. We opened the latest quarterly budget report. It looked normal. At first, land beautification, $93,000 surveying services, $18,000 consulting fees, $12,000 community expansion planning, $14,500, and then, there it was. Trisha Langford, community consultant payment, $18,000. Jake muttered, she paid herself. I kept scrolling. Duplicate invoice numbers, vague line items, and a payment to a law firm owned by, get this, Trisha's cousin. We printed every page. It wasn't just corruption. It was an embezzlement. She wasn't just weaponizing the HOA, she was profiting from it, and I wasn't going to let it stay hidden. Jake leaned back, arms crossed. We take this to the sheriff? I shook my head. Not yet. I want every single person in that community to see it. In the open. No denials, no spin. They need to know who they've been following. Jake smirked. You're planning something. Oh yeah, I said, grinning. I'm calling a town hall. We called it a community transparency review meeting, but let's be honest, it was a public reckoning. Jake and I printed over 70 flyers and passed them out through fences, slipped them into mailboxes, even taped one to the Raintree Hills. Bulletin board with a thumbtack so deep it cracked the cork. The flyer didn't say HOA corruption or financial scandal. It just said, ever wonder where your HOA dues go? Come find out. Saturday, 6 p.m. Raintree Hills Pavilion. All residents welcome. We rented a canvas tent, set up folding chairs, borrowed a projector. I brought a thermos of black coffee and enough fire in my chest to burn down every lie Trisha Langford had built. By 5:45, they started arriving. By 6:10, we had over 80 people packed under the tent, some standing outside in lawn chairs, others leaning against golf carts with their arms crossed. Even HOA board members showed up, trying to look calm, but Trisha, no sign of her. At exactly 6:15, I stepped up to the mic. Good evening, I said. My name is Henry Blake. Most of you know me as the man beyond the ridge, the one who's, been called a squatter, a vandal, even a threat to property values. A ripple of awkward laughter moved through the crowd. I came here tonight with no agenda other than the truth. What I'm about to show you isn't hearsay, it's not speculation, it's documentation. The screen behind me lit up. Slide 1. The official environmental report, detailing the illegal water diversion caused by HOA landscaping projects under Trisha's orders. Slide 2. Photographs of the destroyed field, the tampered valve, and the red bracelet bead found in the mud. Slide 3. The financial report. Line by line, expense by vague expense, with Trisha Langford's name stamped on multiple self-approved payments. I paused. Then I clicked again. Slide 4. The cousin's law firm. Slide 5. Duplicate invoice numbers. Slide 6. Beautification project. Trail development, $93,000, with no trails to show for it. The silence in the tent was deafening. Then it cracked. Wait. She paid herself? That's my money. She always said it was just administrative fees. She lied to us. I raised my hand. Folks, I'm not here to tell you how to live. I've never tried to join your HOA, never asked for a dime, never tried to change your rules. I just want to be left alone. But instead, I've been harassed, sabotaged, accused of arson, fined illegally, and nearly lost my land. More murmurs. And the worst part? I held up the final slide. It was a screenshot of the bulldozers on my land, sheriff cruisers in the background. My boundary stakes ripped from the ground. This was their final move, until the county shut it down. And now, it's your move. Suddenly, from the back of the tent, a familiar voice snapped through the air. You're all being manipulated! Trisha had arrived, hair perfect, makeup thick, clipboard in hand. She stormed down the center aisle like a derailed train. This is slander. He's trying to destroy everything we built. I was working for the community. Someone stood up. By stealing our money? Another voice. You lied to all of us. Trisha's face flushed red. You don't understand the pressures of running a community. I did what I had to do to keep things in order. Jake leaned forward. Calm. Cold. No. You did what you had to do to keep control. Another resident chimed in. We demand a full audit, starting tonight. A board member, visibly sweating, raised his hand. I moved to remove Tricia Langford as acting HOA president. Seconded, voted, passed, unanimous. She stared in disbelief. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, like a fish pulled from water. You're making a mistake. He's going to drag this place into ruin. I looked her dead in the eyes. I didn't drag anything. You buried it, and I just dug it up. She stormed out of the tent, heels stabbing the grass like she was trying to kill the earth itself. Applause broke out behind her. People stood. Some clapped slowly. Others walked up and shook my hand. But it wasn't over. Because the very next morning, Jake called me again. You're going to want to come see this. I pulled up outside Tricia's luxury home just as 3 sheriff's cruisers and a county prosecutor's SUV rolled up the drive. Tricia stood on the porch in a robe, yelling, "This is my money. I did it for the community." The prosecutor handed her a sealed envelope. "Ma'am, you're being charged with embezzlement, fraud, and misuse of funds. You'll need to come with us." They cuffed her, in full view of her HOA kingdom. No cheers, no jeers, just quiet justice. As the cruiser drove away, I stood by my truck with Duke, and for the first time in months, I smiled. I thought that after Tricia Langford was handcuffed right on her porch, everything would finally be over. I was wrong. A week later, another letter arrived, this time not from the HOA and not from any lawyer. The upper left corner of the envelope bore the seal of the Colorado State Boundary and Property Review Board. I stood silent on my porch, the letter in hand, Duke circling my legs, sniffing the breeze like he could sense something wasn't right. I tore it open, reading quickly. In response to a formal complaint filed by the Raintree Hills Residential Association, this office has initiated a review of the boundary lines for the property registered under Mr. Henry Blake. You are required to present all documentation, legal proof of ownership, and maps at the upcoming hearing. Said hearing will be held at the Timber Ridge County Courthouse. I let the letter fall to my side, my vision dimming. They still weren't done. Tricia might have been arrested, but what she'd started still lingered. Others in the HOA were still playing their game of legal gymnastics. This time it wasn't about cutting cables, breaking fences, or making threats. This time they were taking it to court. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I dug through every old file box I had, hand-drawn maps from my grandfather. A laminated copy of our original land deed dated 1952, stamped and sealed. My father's old notes, scribbled in purple ink, recording every fence post, every time we rebuilt the riverbank after the 1982 flood. I even contacted the local historical society, and they found something I didn't expect. A photograph of our ranch from 1971, featured in an exhibition on unsubdivided, unrezoned properties. My ranch, the Dalton Homestead, was officially recognized as a local historical property. The hearing took place at the county courthouse. I walked into that meeting room with a dirt-scented shirt, a folder thick as a dictionary in hand, and Jake walked behind me like a silent but steady witness. 3 board members sat at the front, faces unreadable. The chairwoman, a woman named Hollis, began. "Mr. Blake, please present your case." I didn't argue. I presented evidence, every map, every photo, every notarized page. I played a video clip of the bulldozer crossing my boundary line. I handed over the environmental report. I opened my father's handwritten journal. On the page labeled West Boundary, last confirmed with Jake's father. Markers intact. No one may touch. Signed, Dalton Sr. The room went still. Finally, Hollis looked up. "And to confirm, you've never been a member of the HOA? Not me, not my father, not my grandfather, nor received any support or services from them?" Every buy, post, every sheet of tin, every solar panel, I installed myself. She nodded. The board murmured quietly, then rose from their seats. This board finds no evidence to support Raintree Hills HOA's claim over Mr. Henry Blake's property. All complaints are dismissed. Any future encroachment will be considered a criminal offense. Applause broke out. Neighbors stood, some shook my hand, some just smiled quietly. A few HOA members left the room with their heads down. I didn't say a word, just turned to Jake, gave him a light pat on the shoulder. We're done, here. A week later, things began to settle. The local station aired the headline, "Man defends historic ranch from greedy HOA." Folks stopped by to say hello, brought jars of apple jam, even asked if they could copy my boundary documents for their own properties. Then, one soft, sunny morning, a silver sedan pulled up at the gate. A woman in her early 40s, brown hair, simple cardigan, stepped out. She held something wrapped in white silk. "Are you Henry Blake?" "Yes. Can I help you?" "I'm Lisa, Trisha Langford's daughter." Duke growled low. I clenched my hand. She bowed her head. "I don't agree with what my mother did. I live in another state. But when everything hit the news, I saw the photos, I read the stories, and I just wanted to say, thank you for standing your ground, for not backing down." She unfolded the fabric. Inside was an old photo, my ranch, a 1970. In the photo, my grandfather stood in front of the old cattle barn, one hand resting on a shepherd dog. In the background were the pines, the dirt road, and a wooden sign carved with the words, Blake Ranch. This was in a keepsake box my grandmother left behind. "I think it belongs with its rightful owner." I accepted the photo with shaking hands. My throat closed tight. "Thank you, Lisa," I whispered. "This means more than you know." She nodded, then quietly returned to her car. I stood there, holding the picture as the vehicle disappeared down the road. Duke sat beside me, silent. I looked out at the distance. Where the grass was green again, the fences were fixed, and the boundary stakes freshly painted. That land, still standing. Still. Mine. And always will be. I'm not a hero. I'm just a man who refused to be pushed out of his own home. And if you're hearing this story from somewhere far away, remember this. Land doesn't speak, but it remembers who belongs. And the next time some HOA Karen tries to redraw boundaries, just remind them, karma carries a map, and it never forgets the lines.